Hello everyone and welcome to the 11th edition of the SALT Lunchbox. My name is Dave. I'm the founder of SALT Sport and Life Training. We're a not-for-profit health education organisation and we're using this time in isolation while we're distancing to create a stronger and more capable and more expansive SALT for the future. The aim of this lunchbox is to inspire and connect. Inspire you to take at least one thing that you've heard today and put it into action. We also want you to stay connected, as we've said before, to those who you love and care for, but also to create new connections with the people who join us for this SALT Lunchbox. As always, we're going to have the Q&A box down there. We're also going to have the chat there for you to make your comments. We'd love you to make them available to the panel and to all attendees. And we'll also have James Gallagher is working with us. He's a SALT presenter. He's a director at Yellow Box Careers, and he's going to be our SALT moderator, being able to answer your comments and to create more of his own as he's been doing up till now. As always, we'd love to thank our sponsors, Eastland, Bendigo Bank and FC Business Solutions, for their generosity. We know that without them, these sessions would not be possible. We've also got Anthony Phillips. Remember, we had Anthony back when we talked about no footy, no friends, what now? Anthony from Phillips Coaching is going to be talking with us about this topic today on POS parenting. And of course, we'll have Edwina, who has sticky taped her glasses back together since the last time that we saw her. So she will provide us with endless distractions and entertainment as she adjusts her glasses and they fall off her nose like the last session. So today's topic is called Team First Parenting, or positive parenting. And it's a topic that I'm really passionate about, just as Ed struggled to synthesize all of the information that she had when she was talking about values and strengths. We have a whole 60-minute POS parenting course that we do in clubs, and we also have a positive coaching course that we do in clubs. And so to take everything that we do and to put it into 10 minutes means that we only get a chance to talk about the mountain peaks. But I think we'll be able to bring out some great conversation when we meet as a panel. So by background, for 15 years, I was a school chaplain and a counsellor. And for 4 years, I was the chaplain and welfare manager at the Eastern Ranges in what was then known as the TAC Cup. And it's now called the NAB League. It remains the elite underage AFL pathway for under-19 footballers to get into the AFL. And in both roles, I never met a bad kid. I met plenty of kids who'd made bad choices, but when you sat down with each one of them one-on-one and you talked about life, you realised that each of them did the best that they knew how under the circumstances. They wanted to be good, they wanted to do better. And I really do, and often say, think that the most untapped resource we have in the world is this human potential. But I think one of the main reasons why we don't see kids and adults being the best versions of themselves is because as a society, I think we've emphasised the wrong things, and our kids get a message that certain things are important. Last Wednesday, when we spoke about values, we started by asking the question, instead of what do you want to do when you finish school, as in what kind of job, what kind of person do you want to be? How do you want to behave? What impact do you want to have on the world? What's one problem that you would like to try and help solve? And as you know, we typically work in sporting clubs, and that's because in Australia, we put sport and sports people on a pedestal. If you're good at sport, particularly in Victoria, and particularly if you're good at AFL footy, you walk tall down the corridor at school. I would see that as a teacher. You garner respect because you're good at sport. We don't tend to do that as much with, say, scientists. And I can't tell you how often I speak to parents who, even if I haven't known them for long, within a very short time, they'll be telling me how good their son or daughter is at sport. And for instance, if they play basketball, they won't say, oh, my son or daughter plays basketball. They always say they play rep basketball. They love you to know that. And, getting back to those kids who are good at sport at Eastern Ranges, I'd often ask the boys what they wanted to do with their lives, and every one of them would say that they wanted to play AFL. A lot of them didn't even have a plan B. They realistically thought that they were going to. And in 2013, the Eastern Ranges won a premiership by over 100 points. And so arguably they were the best under-19 team football team in the country. And 4 of those 45 boys got drafted. And for every one of those who didn't get drafted, and this included my son who played in that premiership side, there was often a deeply held grief that they would not fulfill their dream of becoming an AFL star, a celebrity, a household name, that they would not be incredibly well paid to do something that they loved and would have done for free. And I believe that as parents, often we can be guilty of contributing to the problem of what it is that our kids believe to be most important, particularly those parents like myself who were obsessed with sport. And for you, it might not be sport. It might be schoolwork or music practice or having a clean home, whatever it is. But for me, I used to say to my son, how was school today? And he'd say, oh, it was okay. And I'd say, did you learn something? And he'd say, no, not really. And I'd say, well, mate, you got to learn stuff because that's why we pay school fees. So make sure you try hard. But for footy or cricket or basketball or any sport really, that was different. I was so invested. I would watch every minute, dissect the game with him, yell and barrack and talk about his performance to my friends while they talked to me about their kids. And you know, looking back, I remember reading recently, experts reckon that typically 80% of the time that you see your kids for is up to the age of 18. And this all happens so fast. Our kids now are 24, 27 and 30. And we see them for family dinners once a week during normal times. Our oldest lives in London. So for the past 4 years, all we've been able to do is FaceTime her. You know, we have a very short time to get this right. So what if instead of us putting such value on how good they are at sport or music or academic performance, we were to put that emphasis on how good a person they were in regard to their values and their character? What if they could see that what really mattered to us was not their academic intelligence, but their social intelligence, their empathy, their resilience, their courage, their generosity? You know, we often focus on a person's IQ, which is reasonably fixed and hard to measure. And we know too that even academic performance is not a strong indicator of life success. But our EQ, our emotional intelligence, is a very strong indicator of our life success. And this is something that we can grow and develop throughout our lives. What if after a sporting game, instead of commenting on how many goals or kicks or baskets, we said something like, "Love the way you followed the game plan, showed real self-discipline. Love the way you thanked the umpire after the game, that showed real care, real empathy. Love the way you never gave up, that showed real courage and commitment." Here we would be rewarding and honouring their character strengths, their values, instead of their talents. We would be encouraging them to grow their EQ, which will set them up to be successful in life, not just sport. We would be encouraging them to develop an aspect of their life which is actually within their control. We'd be saying we value who you are more than what you can do. We would be helping them to discover the best versions of themselves. Our team member, Larice, who you remember from a week or two ago, was part of a program presenting at Monash University with students who were preparing to apply for their first jobs. And she spoke to over 1,000 students for over a year and a half about the type of jobs they were targeting and how they were going about choosing jobs to apply for. And so as part of this process, they were encouraged to apply for jobs based on who they authentically were and what their values were. And you know, around 90% of those attendees had surprisingly said that they felt they'd never, ever been looking for jobs based on themselves, but actually their parents. And they had not taken the right courses they believed after having done them that aligned with their strengths and values. How sad to think that so many kids, and I've seen this so many times, going to uni, end up at the end going, I think I did the wrong course. They felt that they'd been looking for jobs based on what someone else had told them, rather than what they now, having discovered so much more about their authentic selves, felt that they should be doing. Many of them shared that no one had ever asked them what they really valued, what was important to them, how they wanted to contribute to the world. And so getting back to it, we have around 18 years to help and enable our kids to explore and grow who they want to be, what difference they want to make, what purpose they see for themselves. And there's no better time for this than right now when we're locked down with them. And we can do this if we choose to speak, as I said, more about their character, their effort, their empathy, their resilience, and less about their performances. And when we look at the problems society faces and we worry as parents about them, the drugs, the alcohol, the poor self-esteem, the mental health, the suicide, etc., we can actually give them the tools and the character that they will need to succeed in a world where many will succumb. And so sport is great, Music is great. Being in a choir or a band are amazing training grounds. Volunteering, fantastic. Youth groups, the whole works. They're great because they help people develop character strengths and values that we can apply to the challenges of life that come later. So here's what I think are the pillars to bringing up kids. Firstly, we say to them, this is how much I love you, always, and you will never, ever lose that love. And these are the values that are important to us as a family, particularly when they're really young. And this is why we believe they're important. And then we demonstrate them, we live them. And then we discuss with them, tell me, what are the values that are important to you? And of course, many will align with yours. And how are you going to live these out? And what will you hope to see happen if you live these out? Imagine these conversations. The next thing I've always said to our kids, and even the groups of kids I had at school, this is how much we trust you. We absolutely trust you, and we will always trust you until you break the trust. And if you never break the trust, we'll continue to widen that opportunity for you. And you can tell us anything. In fact, we want you to be open and vulnerable and real, and we will talk through any issue with you. Nothing is too embarrassing or too hard. We will talk it through with you. Honesty and trust. After love, these are the big ones. Then explain to your kids, if you make a mistake, you can always start again. It's never too late to turn over a new leaf. There's going to be consequences for your mistakes, and they may hurt you, and we will not shield you from those. But you can rebuild, and we will help you to rebuild. Lastly, this life is not about you. It's actually about others. And they need to learn that early because that's counterinstinctive. As they get older, and we're going to do another session later in this series on younger children, but as they get older, let them know we will be your safety net. We won't let you live on the street, but we won't give you everything you want. You're going to have to earn those things. In the last 3 years, 2 of our kids have been married, and at both weddings, I've never once thought, I'm so proud of how they did in maths. I'm so proud of how they dominated in sport. I thought I'm actually so happy because they are happy. They are independent and capable, that they are good people making good decisions. So 3 takeaways from today, and I'll bring up the slide later. Number 1, we need to emphasize who they are, not what they can do. We need to model what we expect because they catch what we do, not what we say. And we need to build trust and honesty over everything else. Well, welcome to Anth and to Edwina. How are those glasses sitting, Edwina?
Yeah, still not good, Dave. Specsavers have said that they'll be here soon, but yes, haven't got them yet. So I'm just working with the tape I've got on them and hoping they stay on my face today.
Terrific. And how are you, Anth?
Great, Dave. Thanks for that great talk today. I really enjoyed it. As you and I have said, we could talk for hours about this topic, and obviously with many experiences over the years. So yeah, look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah. Now you're both parents, and I think in both cases it's 3 kids. So 9 between us. 3 is that nice number. It's a huge topic. Would you be emphasising something different? If you'd only had 10 minutes to chat, would you have said something different, Ed?
Look, I totally agree with you, Dave. But I think the really important thing, we all as parents, I guess, we do have the right intent. And I think that's the thing to state up front. It's not that we do it wrong. We've always got that right intent. But I think it is, our language can have such a powerful influence on our kids. And it's just knowing what are the things that are going to get the best outcomes, I guess, with our kids. You know, I've got 3 kids. And they're all just so different, from, very independent, all girls, 3 girls. And yeah, so I'm sure we'll have some interesting discussion, but, we don't get it right. And I think the important thing as parents is that we acknowledge that and, I guess, show our own vulnerability, because I think that's part of the process of teaching them, that we can acknowledge that we don't get it right always, and they can help us just as much as we can help them.
I think that's terrific. When they're really little, sometimes we worry, they're not going to think highly enough of us. So we always have to be right, but actually it's quite the opposite, isn't it? When they see us being vulnerable and honest and admitting mistakes, really important. Yeah. How about you, Anth? If you'd had 10 minutes, would you have emphasised something slightly different in that?
No, I'm totally aligned with what you said there, Dave. And I think, putting the child first is one of the big things. Us as educators, we learnt that to be child-centric. And I think if you can focus on that, it's about their life. You're having your life at a different stage, but when they're young, sport and it doesn't matter what it is, music, drama, whatever activities they're in, they want to feel the values of what that is. And I just think character stands right out in front. And I know that even dealing with a lot of elite athletes, that character is such a huge thing now, which is really based on those great values you were talking about, and probably having some tough times too, where you build resilience. Like, I think those talented kids always get placed in the best positions, the most game time, all that sort of thing, but they often stop growing earlier. And so some of those late bloomers, you've got to encourage them, and also with those really talented kids, give them some different opportunities as they're going through junior sport in particular.
Now, Anthony, I just want to ask you, you've got two kids who play AFL. And so they've achieved that ultimate dream of many young kids. And yet I know you take them, and always have, to the poorest places in the world. You've really worked hard to make sure that their worldview is very balanced. So tell us a little bit about that, and how you've managed under those, quite difficult circumstances to keep your kid grounded when he's had, both of them have had such success.
Yeah, our guys, they've been successful in terms of, you look at an outcome and an end product, but at the end of the day, they had to do it, Dave. And so I think, as we've discussed, a little bit of push here, a little bit, one may ask for a bit of advice. One takes the knowledge and goes away and works on it. Another one's, our third one is, we'll just do anything you're asked, the coach is asked, or parents or whatever, doesn't really give much feedback. So they're all different how they go about it. So we tried to get them to respect all adults as we were running businesses, and our kids got introduced, luckily, to some travel, which we took them to, as you said, third world countries. We wanted to give them perspective on life, and that they have a very charmed and good life in Australia, and even to get football boots or, a uniform, and to be taken to training and to play organised games is unique. You go to places in Africa and Asia that we took our kids. We took one footy, one soccer ball in, and that was the pride of the whole village. 50, 100 kids come out, and we're running around streets, kicking one soccer ball, between two portable made-up goalposts. So there's perspective in it, and it's just that appreciation and gratitude for their life, but also that respect that, that other people don't get those privileges.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Anthony's oldest son is Tom Phillips at Collingwood, and Ed Phillips at St Kilda, and Ant's daughter Lucy was as an outstanding basketballer as well. And Ed, you had a bit of a different take. Your kids played sport, and we're using sport as the example because this is SALT. But your kids were good at sport, but you weren't all that keen for them to become elite. Explain why.
Look, I think my life has been, my husband Brennan played state cricket. So, we had a life of, sitting on the edge of selection and relegations and all of those sorts of things. There was enormous pressure. And there was a lot of sacrifice that goes into elite sport. And I think in my heart, I just thought, you know what, I hope the girls are good at sport, perhaps not as great, so that they can get a balance and perhaps have those other things in life. And in the end, the girls did they played netball, was their major sport. They did play a couple of other things too. But they made the choice to sort of bow out of that, pursuing that elite sport, knowing in their hearts that they were going to have to commit a whole lot of things to it that they weren't prepared to. And I think, as a parent, sometimes there can be great disappointment in that. And we have to resolve that it is their choice. The other thing I think that's also really important is that when they are in teams, that they have some other adults investing in their lives. And I am just incredibly grateful, even though the girls didn't pursue to a higher level, that they had some exceptional coaches in their lives that invested and were able to bring out the best in them. And I think that's a really critical thing too. If we can just the participation in sport, or it doesn't have to be sport, it can be other things, it can be performance or music, whatever it is, but encouraging that input of other adults investing in our kids' lives. And it's actually a key resilience factor that they have found over time.
Just briefly, Ed, we were talking earlier, and we want to praise our kids, but you talked about the difference between process praise and then focusing on the end result. So how do we best encourage our kids with that?
Look, yeah, so often the issue we have in education, I'm hopefully I'll look at it from three perspectives: sport, business, and education. But to praise the process means that, you know, if a child's going to get a good grade, we're going to say, oh, you did 5 practice exams and that was really hard, and look at the outcome, that was fantastic. In business, it might be that you're spending time with a client to build a strong relationship, and then a really good sale results from that. In sport, it might be the selection in a representative side, but you know that there's a lot of time and effort gone into the process of getting there. So rather than saying, oh, you're smart, you got that grade, or gee, you're talented at sport, you got that outcome, or you're just a good salesperson, you're actually acknowledging the effort that goes into those outcomes, because there's no free ride for anyone. And I think sometimes we think that the outcomes come to people easily. And maybe that's true for a small amount. It's the process that I think we can really encourage. And that helps our kids and our employees and, you know, members of our teams to think and be proud of the journey. And I think also to keep that innate intrinsic motivation, we have to be loving what we're doing. So loving the journey. You know, if it's a swimmer, I think Anthony was talking, you know, or you and Dave were talking about, they've got to get up early every morning. They've got to love that process, or they'll end up just hating what they're doing. And you don't want that. You want them to love the process, learn throughout the journey, and then the outcomes will just look after themselves.
Yeah. I was mentioning the father of Mac Horton, the swimmer, he's a friend of Salt, and he said there was never a morning I got Mac out of bed to go swimming. The very morning, if he decided that he wasn't wanting to do this anymore, then we would have loved the sleep in that we would have got. But he was self-motivated. And Anthony, you were talking earlier about your oldest boy, Tom, and just recap that conversation that he had with you at about 16 years of age.
Well, yeah, the Ron Barassi, the old saying, if it is to be, it's up to me. And really at 16, yeah, Tom, look, he was pretty skillful, small, skinny boy, you know, typical footy, late mature. And yeah, look, we gave him all the foundations. He missed all the squads, got cut here, got cut there. I remember him not real happy, very disappointed in his bedroom. And, you know, he kept working on things, but he virtually said, yeah, look, now you've taught me all the basics. And I want to really spread my wings. And yeah, he got into some good programs and some good coaching. And as Edwina was saying, at the end of the day, he had a burning, deep passion to follow his dreams. And I suppose when we backed off and released, he just flourished. And from being sport coaches and qualified phys ed teachers and that sort of thing, you can sort of see the talent and want to nurture it. But as Ed was saying, you know, it's about hard work. It's about resilience. It's about them actually doing it and wanting to do it, because even boys we coach in the, you know, for football drafting now, it's living and breathing that hard routine and discipline and meetings and structure every day. It's not just about kicking the ball around anymore. So there's a whole heap of stuff you need to be ready for, which is underpinned by what you said today: values and building strong character.
Yeah, I think there's a really thanks to Les Twentyman, who said in our chat, when he was filming gang stuff in the US, he was constantly told that the best basketballers were not playing the NBL, but around the housing projects. They were just not getting the best family supports, resulting in them never getting drafted. And I think it's really important to note that our kids that do often make it do have those strong supports, and there are some kids out there that lack of family supports, and perhaps we need to be thinking there and perhaps finding some of those kids and ensuring perhaps that they get those supports to be able to if they don't have those families. So how do we build that within community? I think that's a really important thing. And I wonder with SALT, Dave, being out in clubs, being able to identify some of those kids and perhaps helping getting, it takes a village to raise a child. So how do we get community in to fill in those supports and enable those kids to reach their potential too? But thanks, Les, for that and mentioning that, because I think it is so important to acknowledge.
I think when kids start coming back into sporting clubs, the junior sporting clubs are going to be looking at, how do we do things now when our kids are coming off this long break? And I do think it would be a really smart move for junior clubs to be thinking, have we got enough people around each team that we can actually say to every kid, look, here's someone that you can talk to, here's 2 or 3 people, those other adults. Because so often, as we know, our kids at a certain age will listen to other adults more than they'll listen to us. And I think that, could be one of the good things to come out of this. James says, calmly teaching our children good behaviour can become more difficult, though no less important during stressful times. What tips have you guys got about, how we can talk to our kids during this time? I made the point when I read Larissa's, feedback about working out at Monash. How sad is it that our kids can do 4 years or more of a uni course, get to the end and go, actually, I haven't learnt the things that align with my values. And that's not the work that I want to do. That's a sad waste of time. Not a waste of time, but it could have been, perhaps used better. And typically, again, also, so many kids want to finish school and have a gap year so they can work out what they want to do. And this leads really nicely into our session next week, where Lane will be talking, on Wednesday, about our job, our story, getting our story right before we choose our profession. So now we've got time where our kids are at home, and I've heard a lot of parents say, it's hard, but I'm enjoying and having it at home. How can we use this time now to the very best to help set our kids up for, coming out of this period of time?
I think one of the ways is having questions around what their passions are, and exploring that. And I think coming to your other point about careers, my eldest daughter undertook a management degree and ended up in a consulting firm, and she knew that it was really eroding her every being. She was getting paid really well, but the work wasn't giving clear meaning for her. And it was really hard because, you were sort of weighing up financial security and job security, but we really encouraged her to follow her passion, and that was fashion design. And so she's created her own sustainable fashion business, and also working part-time because it can't fund her full-time. So she's doing that and pursuing her passion. And so Brennan and I have just supported that, as has her husband's family, and her husband as well have really got behind that. And I think that's been a really great lesson for us, because you can't work somewhere where your heart, you're just not being energized by the work. And if that meaning and purpose is not there for us, makes it very difficult.
All right. Final word, Ant, because it's 1:28. You've got 3 kids living at home at the moment, and 2 of them are normally under the very strict regime of an AFL training. In a few sentences, how are you using this time to maximise the impact?
Oh, definitely, getting back to their study. They've got other subjects at uni to do, which most players at that level do have as well. Lots of hobbies, if you're out surfing, mountain biking, stuff you can do with social distancing, hiking, walking, the board games, lots of social things where we get the family around, having a bit of fun, just loosening off a bit. Our boys are loving it in a way, because it's just a little bit of pressure off and they can focus on some other things. But when they do their training, it's very, they're giving a lot of energy and focus. So I think just it comes back to balance, doesn't it? Balance and moderation, and not overdoing any one thing in life. So I think that balance is just crucial.
I've brought up the 3 takeaways from today. We need to emphasise who they are, not what they can do. We need to model what we expect. We need to build trust and honesty over everything else. Call to action we're going to have after every session. Have a conversation with your child. What kind of person do you want to be? What are you really passionate about? What impact do you want to have in the world? What problem would you like to solve? Let's start digging in that space where we haven't been before, possibly. I mentioned on Wednesday, we've got Lane talking about your story and using this time to perhaps reset in terms of your work life, what you want to achieve after this period of isolation. Once again, we thank our sponsors, as we always do, Bendigo Bank, Eastland FC, and Ripple Effect. If you miss a session, as you know, go to our website, go to our Facebook site, and you can link in and watch anything that you've missed. That's the number for Lifeline. We always put it up just in case somebody out there might need it. And we come to 1:30 with a fantastic thank you to everybody who joined in. Thanks, Anth. Thank you, Edwina. Get those glasses fixed. No, don't get them fixed because we like watching them fall off your face. It's very entertaining. Thanks, everybody. Remember, we can come out of this time stronger, better, richer in the things that really matter. Bye for now.